going to simplify and write my answer using only positive exponents. I'm going to do one set of parentheses at a time and simplify it. So just starting with this first one, this one, I notice that inside the parentheses is a negative exponent. Whenever that happens, I make a fraction bar. Anything with a positive exponent stays where it is. So I'm just going to write down v cubed. Anything with a negative negative exponent moves. So this is on the top, it's going to move to the bottom. When you do that, you take the negative sign away. Okay, that's the first fraction. Second fraction, let me go ahead and put this in parentheses. I'm going to get rid of the negatives first, and if it doesn't have an exponent, it's assumed to be a 1, so I'll go ahead and write that down also. Okay, so u to the first. The v has a negative exponent, so instead of the top, you're going to move it to the bottom, take the negative sign away. In the denominator, I have 3 to the first. I'm going to pop that out front of the variables. And then the w has a negative exponent, so I'm going to, instead of the bottom, I'm going to move it to the top, take the negative away. Still have that exponent of 3. Now, we took care of the parentheses. We're actually literally using the order of operations here. So parentheses first, and then the exponents. So I'm going to get rid of this exponent outside of the parentheses. My first fraction, I'm going to leave it alone. The second fraction, I'm going to distribute this exponent 3 to all the other exponents inside. So for my u, when you're distributing, you're multiplying. 3 times 1 is 3. For my w, 3 times 2 is 6. And the denominator for the 3, we're multiplying the exponents. 3 times 1 is 3. And for the v, 3 times 4 is 12. Okay, so now I'm going to make it extra long because these fractions are side by side without anything in between them, no plus or minus signs, so it means multiplying them. When you multiply fractions, you go straight across. So I literally just write everything on top of one fraction bar. So v to the third, w to the sixth, oh sorry, forgot the u. Make sure you get everything. U to the third, w to the sixth. In the denominator, I have w to the 1. Okay, this 3 cubed means 3 times 3 times 3, which is 27. I'll move that out front there. And then v to the 12th. Okay, we are almost finished. The last step. You have to simplify your, get like terms together. So for the v's, you want to look and see where the biggest v is, the biggest exponent. The biggest exponent for the v is on the bottom. That means your v is going to be on the bottom. And then you subtract these numbers. 12 take away 3 is 9. For my u, I only have one u in the entire problem. I mean one set of u's, so I'm just going to leave it where it is. For my w's, the biggest exponent for the w's is on the top. That means your w is going to be on the top. Then you subtract those exponents with the w's. 6 take away 1 is 5. And the only thing we haven't dealt with is a 27 that's on the bottom, and it stays where it's at. So that's the final answer. Okay. Simplifying inside of parentheses first. So I'm going to have, I don't have any negative exponents. If I don't have any negative exponents, I can actually literally start distributing these. And actually this negative sign is in the parentheses, so that 2 gets distributed to the negative sign as well. So I'll start with that. So it's 2 negatives. but when you have two negatives, they cancel each other out. So my final answer is going to be positive. So I'm just going to leave that where it is. Okay, so for my 3, I have negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. For my x, I have negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. For my u, negative 2 times 3 is negative 6. And for my z, negative 2 times 2 is negative 4. Now I notice on that I have all negative exponents. So before I go to the next term, which is actually not even got any exponents with it, I'm going to get rid of my negative exponents. And what you do is you make a fraction bar when you have negative exponents, and anything that has a negative exponent moves. So since there are no fractions in the original numbers, everything's going to go to the bottom. When you do that, 3 squared, you take the negatives away. Everything with a negative exponent moves. So I'm moving this all to the bottom. However, I now have nothing left up top, so you have to put a 1. You can't just leave a fraction with nothing in the numerator. Now this next term, x squared u, I'm just going to pop it up top, like that. And this u has an exponent of 1. Okay, let's figure out the numerical part of all of this first. 3 squared is 3 times 3. So now, trying to figure out where to go on this, where I have space. I have 1 on the top, and 3 times 3 is 9 on the bottom. For my x's, if you have the same exponent with your variable, if it's the exact same thing, it cancels out. So x squared cancels out with x squared. For my u, the biggest exponent's on the bottom, so my u is going to be on the bottom. Then you subtract. 6 take away 1 is 5. And the only thing we have left is z to the 4th, and that's on the bottom. So since it's the only z in the problem, I'm going to leave it where it's at. So 1 over 9u to the 5th, z to the 4th is the answer. Okay, the next one. First thing I do is get rid of any negative exponents inside the parentheses. So if it doesn't have an exponent, it's a 1. Okay, so 2 to the 1st, that's a positive exponent, leave it where it's at. X to the 1st is a positive exponent, leave it where it's at. Y to the negative 3rd is a negative exponent, so since it's on the top, I'm going to move it to the bottom, take the negative sign away. In the denominator, z to the negative 2 is a negative exponent. Since it's on the bottom, I'm going to move it to the top and take the negative away. Now I have to deal with this exponent of 3. And I'm going to multiply. So for my 2, 3 times 1 is 3. For the x, 3 times 1 is 3. For the z, 3 times 2 is 6. In the denominator for the y, 3 times 3 is 9. Okay, that first set of parentheses has now been simplified except for the 2 cubed, but I'll talk about that in a moment. We don't have to deal with that right now. The next set of parentheses has a negative exponent, so I'm going to make a fraction. Y squared, positive exponent, stays where it's at. Z to the negative 1, that's going to go to the bottom because if there is no fraction to begin with, it's considered to be a numerator. Okay, so, and this is multiplying here, so this y squared z to the 1st, I'm just going to pop it up on this. Y squared z1, like that. Okay. 2 to the 3rd power is 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. So for my x's, I just have x cubed. For my z's, the biggest z is on the top, which means your z is going to be on the top. 6 take away 1 is 5. At this point, you're subtracting the exponents. For my y's, I've got a 9 and a 2. The biggest number is 9. That's on the bottom, so yours is going to be on the bottom. Then subtract. 9 take away 2 is 7. And I think, yep, That's everything.